pandemic?
Well, I think there were two sort of different sets of issues, as there always are when it comes to interviews with the president, which are ANC issues and then issues that sort of relate to government. And I think that on the ANC issue and the Ace Magashule issue, he did not give a straight answer, and I think that was odd and did not work in his favor because the January the 8th statement said quite clearly that people who've been charged with criminal activities must step down. Yet the president, when he was pushed, and the journalists really pushed, I was impressed with their tenacity, and they really pushed, and he refused to kind of commit, saying no, this is all in hand, it's all going to be sorted out. And yes, it is, but that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear, what do you think, Mr. President? So I think I don't know if you want me to go on to the COVID, to the epidemic issue.
Please go through. Now. Yeah, go ahead, because I want Bullet to react to both.
Yes. Okay. So on the epidemic, I think that the government has put out a line, and their line has been, well, we couldn't pre-buy vaccines because we just couldn't afford it. And I think that what has happened over the last 2 weeks is that has been exposed to be untrue. Firstly, many other income countries, even African countries that are not as wealthy as us, such as Kenya, have gone ahead and pre-bought millions and millions of vaccines. Kenya has something like 12 million vaccines arriving in their country, whereas we're expecting 1.5 million. So I don't think that it's true. And secondly, the other issue of the we don't have money issue. What money is spent on, what tax money, what government money, what government revenue is spent on is a political choice. You make a choice. So if you're the president and you're the finance minister and you're the cabinet, you're making choices all the time. Should we spend money on SAA? Should we spend money on vaccines? Should we spend money on school books? Should we spend money on increasing teachers' salaries? You make those choices all the time. And what I'm saying is that he repeated that argument, and it's not convincing.
Pulemabe, there you have it from Carol Payton. She says quite simply, the president was not convincing. I want to start with the last point about vaccines and government holding back on prepayments. And she points out countries like Kenya that they actually did put down a prepayment. So the story of the South African government, ANC-led government, was simply not convincing in as far as the lag in acquiring these vaccines. How do you respond?
Morning and morning, Colin.
Pulemabe, freezing on us there. We're going to try and see if we can get Pulemabe on the phone line instead. Carol, I want to continue with you while we try and connect Pulemabe. Yesterday, the ANC holding a meeting with the Progressive Business Forum, and the president announcing yet another interministerial committee, but this time around it's going to be chaired by the deputy president, and the DA describing him in your publication today as someone who has been an absentee deputy president. Can we gain confidence as South Africans that David Mabuza overseeing this process that South Africans are already complaining about? Really, is he going to do a better job than what he's done, for example, chairing the steering committee, or rather the war room at Eskom?
Well, I'm extremely concerned about the deputy president now being in charge of the vaccine rollout. I think that he's one of the least energetic members of the president's cabinet, and he hasn't been inspiring, and he hasn't been a big presence, and there's nothing to indicate that he really does take his job in government seriously. So I'm concerned about that. I also think that, President Ramaphosa likes to make these interministerial committees And I think that it's good and important, because you do need, for instance, the health minister and the finance minister in the room together to make these decisions. And I think that's one of the problems, which is why we had this big, this very, very slow vaccine acquisition, is because the two of them were not communicating. So I do think IMC is good in general. I don't think that David Mabuza is going to be an energetic, confidence-inspiring choice. And I also think that, you know, there's half the cabinet on that meeting. So every time you want to have a meeting about vaccine rollout, you must convene 15 people or whatever it is. So I think that it's kind of, yeah, it doesn't inspire me with confidence as the kind of latest move.
And how would you describe his performance as the chair of the ESCOM War Room?
No, it's something I want to get a handle on, because it's very difficult to get a handle on, like how active is David Mabuza. I've heard from ESCOM that David Mabuza has actually been quite effective for them, in the sense that he does convey their concerns. Their concerns are reaching government, and that's positive. But as we know, there is very little urgency. There are big issues facing ESCOM. ESCOM needs to get on. It needs to it needs to disaggregate. It needs to set up these three different arms. It needs to get these things moving, and there doesn't seem to be any urgency from government, whether it's Gwede Mantashe or David Mabuza. There doesn't seem to be much urgency in getting those things done, and we're feeling it, and the economy's feeling it.
Yeah. Pulemabe, I'm told that we can get a clear line to you now. Respond first to the earlier points that Carol made, and that is that the ANC and its government have not been convincing in their story of why South Africa seemed to have acquired the vaccines late. But secondly, the issue of the president being evasive as to why Secretary General Ace Magashule is still sitting at Luthuli House, basically not wanting to take a position.
Morning, Toli, and I have to apologize to the connection issues earlier.
No worries, thank you.
Maybe, Toli, just to start, there is an issue that was raised about the president not being available to the media. Maybe we should really clarify that one as well. We always try ourselves from a point of view of the Department of Information and Publicity in the African National Congress to make sure that we create a platform through which the president could be able to interact with members of the media, allow them to bring forward whatever issue of concern or whatever is out there in the public domain. You know, and the president, whenever time permits, he does make that space available. Just last year, when we concluded our January 8th in the Northern Cape, we would have had a similar session where the president at that time interacted with the broadcasters. We expanded that this year. He had first interacted with yourselves, with all the three main broadcasters in the country, and went on to engage with the digital media platforms.
Yeah.
I did also speak with the political editor of the Business Day, and that assured them that there will be a second round that would be including the Business Day, Your Citizen, Mail and Guardian, and there will also be another session that also brings on board community media as well.
Yeah.
We are not doing this because it's an electioneering year. We do understand and feel that it's important that as the African National Congress, our leadership is available to engage with society using platforms of mass media and all of that. It's just that sometimes there are these problems of scheduling and all of that. It's not that the president has not been available.
All right. I think you've made the point.
Has been avoiding interacting with the media. Just to come straight to the issue that you have raised.
Yes.
Those of our cadres who are deployed in government have taken it up upon themselves to brief the leadership of our movement on the work that they are doing as it relates to the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. They also went to town in clarifying those that are going to be first prioritized, your frontline workers, and how they are going to really forge ahead with that work until the country achieves herd immunity.
Yeah.
These updates have been ongoing. From time to time, Dolly, if we need to convene a special NEC or a special NWC for purposes of getting a report or feedback from our deployees in government, we do exactly that. When schools were to reopen and our own deployees in government needed to put a case forward that showed that perhaps we need to at least allow some 2 weeks or so that the entire system is ultimately prepared for the reopening of schools. We ensured that the structures on the ground are taken on board, that the relevant teacher unions are briefed, that all your different governing bodies in the country working together with the Department of Health are briefed. It could be that we are not moving with the kind of speed that many out there would expect our government to. But the fact that this government takes its own time to come out and give updates on the work that they are undertaking to deal with the vaccine rollout, that should bring a sense of relief. But what we also require, we need to be together with the media, because the media is going to play a critical role towards societal understanding on the vaccine rollout.
All right. Mr. Mabe, let me do this. Let me do this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to take the headlines at 10 o'clock. I'm going to humbly ask the two of you if you could still remain where you are. Very good morning to you once again if you're just joining us, and let's get straight to that conversation between Carol Payton and Pule Mabe. In the past week, the president having a very, very busy day at Luthuli House, or busy couple of days, just talking to the media about the issues that face the country. But as Carol Payton wrote in her opinion piece yesterday in the Business Day, stating that the president simply was not convincing in these media interviews. And I want to pick up with you, Pule Mabe. Carol Payton, thanks indeed for still holding on. I want to come to you in just a moment. But Pule, I'm going to hurry us along. The point being made by Carol Payton is that the country simply has not acquired vaccines yet. You have a company that is actually developing a vaccine right on our doorstep, and that is Johnson & Johnson. So how in the world can South Africa or the South African government justify delaying the prepayment, if you like, when other countries, even on the continent, committed to these prepayments? It's simply not an excuse, as Carol Payton would have it.
Well, thank you, Tony. Without blurring the lines between party and state, I'm sure that those of our cadres who are deployed in government are in a better position to be able to clarify the position of government. I will only relay what we shall have been briefed, the updates that we've received from our deployees in government in the form of the Minister of Health, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, as well as the President himself, who leads the National Coronavirus Command Council and is also the President of the Republic. Safe to say that even with the kind of fiscal constraints, I'm sure that we are all aware that there are physical constraints that this country has been undergoing, and those constraints would have made it a little bit difficult for government to do some of the things that it needed to do. Safe to say, where we are now, we have been given the necessary assurance, whether through the COVAX facility that South Africa participates in, as well as through our own internal means.
All right.
That we will be able to roll out the vaccine and be able to ensure that by the end of this year, we have achieved them.
All right. Pule Mabe, I think you've touched on the very point that Carol Payton did raise in her article. Carol, the story of money, once again coming up.
Yes, no, exactly. And as I said, it's a choice. And I think that the notion that South Africa has no money is not correct. Yes, we have fiscal constraints. We have a lot of debt. We've made very bad decisions, and therefore our finances are in a mess. But we do have money. and it's a political choice to make that money available.
All right.
And I think that so the impression has also been created that these vaccines are going to cost like an enormous amount. The price tag is really something. If medical aids pay for their own members, then the price tag for government is certainly not even greater than 10 billion rand. Now that in the context of a 2 trillion rand budget is not an enormous amount of money, and can be found, as we know it was found for SAA just a few months ago. So that money can be found, and if it can't be found, well then it can be raised. Government is raising debt every single day. It's raising almost 1 billion rand a day in debt. So I don't think it's a case of no money, and I think that's been a very misleading and unfortunate notion.
Yeah. Carol Payton, I want to just quickly wrap up with you as Pule Mabe. I want him to respond just at one go. Yesterday, a very, very important report brought out by the Council for Medical Schemes, headed by Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, the panel that was doing this investigation. And the clear finding there that medical aids, you were just talking about them a moment ago, medical aids, in particular Discovery, MedScheme and GEMS of all medical schemes, which is a government employees medical scheme, found to have practiced racial discrimination against black doctors. I simply cannot believe what we heard yesterday. Your reaction, Carol?
My reaction is that clearly that is not acceptable. I think it's important, though, just also to explain the context. It's not a racial discrimination against doctors in the sense of using their services. It's racial discrimination in suspecting who maybe has committed fraud. So obviously, medical aids have experienced a lot of fraud. There are lots of people claiming for stuff that wasn't done or is faked. So they've got to investigate that. But what they've clearly done, and what the report has shown, is that they have a tendency to assume that it's black doctors who are more fraudulent than white doctors, or other racial. I think it was black and Indian doctors that are more fraudulent than others. So I think that's a concern and not acceptable. And I hope that they'll respond to the report.
Pule Mabe, that last point, Pule Mabe, I'm told he's gone.